lot of soul.
This is Bass Talk Live. Your host, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrack. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, AFCO, Big Bite Baits, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Thursday, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Yes, this is a special edition. This is the Elite Series watch party. First time we've tried doing anything like this. My partner in crime, he is at a rodeo, I think. I think that's where he is. He's not fishing. I think he's doing the rodeo thing today. We will see if he checks in later this morning. But today, folks, something very, very special. We're going to have a watch party from day one of what is going down on Lake Champlain of the Elite Series with our special guest, Mark Menendez, who is going to give us some inside information, just kind of walk us along on his thoughts on what is going down from the coverage that we are actually going to pull in live from the Bassmaster.com website. And once again, folks, I have to thank Bass and Bruce Aiken and Jim Sexton for allowing us to do this. We have a number of BTL and Bass fans on that are going to ask Mark some questions and just kind of hang out for a little while we do this. So let me see if I can bring Mark in first, or bring everybody in. Let's see if we can do this here. Let's see. I got to unmute everybody. All right, Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Mr. Jeffries. Watching it rain like crazy here in Western Kentucky. So fishing from inside is going to be a heck of a lot more fun than it would be outside today.
All right, very cool. We have a number of fans that are going to be watching this, and I want to tell everybody out there that's participating, thank you so much for taking part of this. We're going to have people coming and going and just kind of hanging out, trying to get some knowledge from you, Mark, on what we are going to watch from the Bassmaster feed here on day one. So far, let's kind of fill people in on what is taking place. As you see the standings right there on the screen, Scott Canterbury getting out to a great start. They have cameras on a number of guys, obviously. Most notable, in my opinion, what I'm really curious about, Mark, is what John Cox does, because he made the run to Ticonderoga, totally committed to that. And for some fans out there that may not realize the commitment, why don't you talk a little bit about the commitment that is made if you make that run to Ticonderoga?
Well, what we're looking at here on Lake Champlain is two tails of the tape. One is the north end, one is the south end. That middle section of the lake is just kind of void of fish. There's a few fish there, but the populations live at both ends. So what you have at the lower end is a grass-fed, deep watercolor, shallow water environment that's perfect for John's style of fishing, and that's why he's there. The other thing about that southern end is the way the fish group. They group in areas, so even though it's a 70-mile run, Mark, he can pull up on one place and get that limit fast.
All right, with us we have Rich, we have Jamie, we have Adam, and we have Zach. And here over the last probably 10, 15 minutes, we've been watching Seth Fighter, and he has kind of ditched his smallmouth plan and has found an area, Mark, that is loaded with quite a few largemouth, and he finished out his limit, and now he's actually culled a couple of times.
You know, the last time we were up there, Seth had one particular area, and this looks to be the same area that he almost won the tournament, flipping that same jig in that milfoil. This is how these northern fishermen fish in those bodies of water that aren't reservoirs, those northern glacial lakes. So this suits him perfectly. We know he's a smallmouth expert. He started on those this morning to get 5 and hopefully get one of those tanks like that in the boat. But the largemouth are the key here on getting that real good consistent weight in that 3-pound plus range. Now, Mark, that's the big thing on this lake. It's easy. I say this very skeptically, but it is easy to catch a limit of 2.5-pound fish. But to get paid, you've got to have an average of 2 3/4. A 3-pound average is going to do you real well over the week, but a 3 1/4-pound average may propel you into the finals. So that's how tight these weights are going to be. They're looking for 3.5 pounds. A 3.5-pounder is gold. A 4-pounder is magnificent.
All right, Adam, did you have a question?
No, sorry.
Okay, I saw you kind of point at me, and I thought, okay, he's got a question. All right, Mark, let me ask you this. Based upon what you've seen and kind of what you've heard prior to this event, is it going to be largemouth? Is it going to be smallmouth? Is it going to be a mixed bag?
Well, it'll only be largemouth if they come from 2 areas, that being the south at Ticonderoga or up in Missisquoi Bay. That's where you find those giant 4.5, 5-pound largemouth. If I had to bet, and I bet the line in Las Vegas is saying that it's going to be a mix of the 2 species. The smallmouth are very consistent there, but they just don't get as large as the largemouth do. That 5-pound smallmouth is almost a non-existent creature. 4.5-pounders abound, but a 5-pounder is hard to find. Largemouth is a lot easier.
All right, we're watching Jamie Hartman there, and here over the past probably 30 minutes, he's went to a Carolina rig. He caught a couple of good ones. How impressive, how important, how viable is the Carolina rig on Lake Champlain?
Well, it's a great way to fish because what Jamie's fishing out there is probably an open spot in the grass or a spot in the grass that has a little bit of rubble in there, and those smallmouths are on that as an ambush point. That's a big one he just caught a little while ago. That's that 4-pound, 4 1/4-pound mythical creature, and they tend to bite that Carolina rig with a little bit larger bait. I haven't seen what Jamie's dragging yet, but I mean, they'll bite a 6-inch lizard just as good as they will a drop shot out there, and this gets that better grade of fish for him.
All right, there you have it. And I know he was a little disappointed at his performance at the SLR, but how much does history come into play with so many events that have taken place over the years on Lake Champlain, Mark? Do you get caught up in what has been successful in the past, or is that actually an asset for you to try and win this thing?
Well, it can be an asset and it can be a curse too. The asset part of it is all of that history. If you fish there a while, you know that you're going to be at either end of the lake, the upper end or the bottom end, and that's where you're going to spend your time. If you're a new angler there for the first time, you think about the entire lake, and that just spreads you out so much. So Jamie knows in that upper end of the lake, he's got the opportunity to catch both large and smallmouth, and you're going to see him focus up there. The other thing here is weather, guys. When this place starts rocking and rolling, oh my goodness, it will bring pain. I mean, pain to your back. So travel will be an expense too, getting from one place to the other if the wind decides to blow.
All right, we got Takarani there, and just a few moments ago, Mark, he hooked up with a drum. How common is that on Champlain?
It's fairly common. I mean, Tennessee River smallmouth, like I like to call them, they live up there as well, and they're in those same areas as those smallmouth, feeding on those crayfish in that rocky bottom composition, looking for something to eat. And if something comes through there that they like, they'll be right there on it. That's not a Tennessee River smallmouth. That is a Lake Champlain giant right there. He's a hold up.
Yeah. Now he's up north. Characteristic wise, what is it? Is it rock piles? Is it grass? Is it ledges? What are these guys targeting?
Well, you've got long points that run out there on, well, what is that? Well, he caught another golden species.
Jeez.
That's a carp. How often does that happen?
That's back to back right there.
It is. You're out there, and the rock that you're fishing is generally not big rock. You know, you're looking for places where it's softball size rock that goes to golf ball size rock, or golf ball to pea gravel. Just little small places, and those little transitions out there is where these fish are living. And there's a lot of vegetation around those areas as well. If you can see, when they get more of a vertical look or the sun comes out, you'll see white patches, Mark, and that's generally sand. And any dark patch is either a little rock or a little bit of that grass mixed in. And that's what they're targeting, are those transitions from dark to light. And hopefully there's rock around there.
All right, you guys, if you have a question for Mark, just jump in there, let me know, and ask away. Let's see here. Jamie, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Mark. Hey, Mark, how are you? It's good seeing you again. I'm Marshall.
I'm doing well, Jamie.
Yeah, I marshaled you a few years back on Potomac, so it's good to see you, and hope your back's doing well.
Well, it's coming along. It's slow. The physical therapy is getting me there. Tomorrow I have an MRI to see what kind of damage it actually is, but I'm slowly but surely feeling better. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it's apropos when we watch a tournament like this about guys running so far. So with that said, what's your thought on going down the tie and looking at those largemouth in the grass and knowing that pattern could last for 4 days compared to, say, the guys fishing up north with smallies? What makes that determining factor for you?
Well, it's because at tie, I can get in one little stretch of grass and catch so many. If I found that one area, it reduces the gamble. You see, John's down there fishing right now, and he's actually fishing wood.
With the spinner on.
Have a mix. But for me, going down there, you really don't have time to gather them up one at a time. You've got to run down there and throw on them. And that's what makes that run so appealing, because if you do find that one little stretch, dude, it's game on. I mean, seriously, you can put 20, 22, 23 pounds of fish in the boat quickly. On the upper end, you have options, and you have to fish for that mix. You've got the chance to fish for smallmouth up there, and then if the wind blows, go tuck in and look for largemouth, or just go fish for those 5-pounders. It's more of a gathering game at the upper end of the lake with the 2-species option. But down there where John is, if you're on that good stretch, it generally doesn't take long.
All right. Anybody else have a question? Adam, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Mark. Interesting just the live feed right now, right? I mean, you're not seeing nearly as many spinning rods as on the St. Lawrence River. Is that primarily a forage deal with the gobies? I mean, it seems like we're seeing a lot more big rods, Carolina rigs, crankbaits, spinnerbaits, topwater. It seems to play a lot more. I guess, what are your thoughts on the difference, the St. Lawrence versus
Well, I think it has to do with depth as anything else. At the St. Lawrence, everybody was fishing vertical, pretty much vertical. And those fish feed on relatively small baits. The forage up here, they're chasing yellow perch that are as big as your hand. They're chasing bluegill as big as your hand. There's crappie in there. So there's more forage, so they can fish a larger bait. And I think it has to do more with more of that horizontal presentation. These guys are actually casting instead of just fishing vertical. And you can do that. The water clarity here in Champlain can lend itself to 6-pound line, but it can lend itself to 60-pound line as well. So you've got more options here on how you're comfortable fish. See that grass line right there under the bridge? I'm not taking the 6-pound line down through there.
Wow. Sam, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're all good. Jamie, you have a question?
No, I was just saying hi to Sam.
Okay.
I wanted to one thing, the fish that was it Tacarante caught last, I believe it's actually a tench. They were farmed up in Canada and accidentally released into, I think, through flood waters. I don't know if it was like 10 years ago. I caught one maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They look very similar to the second fish he brought in. They have more of a front-facing mouth. It's a big game fish in Europe, tench fishing, roach fishing. They were farming them up in Canada. There, you find them more on the north end. I bumped into one. They have a fatter tail than a smallmouth, but other than that, it looks exactly like the biggest smallmouth you caught in your life when you're bringing it in, which is what I thought.
Well, that's interesting that it's an invasive species. I'll have to get Yamaha and the Right Waters crew up there to do a little investigation on that. So it sounds like a road trip now.
How's that going at your lake? I know you guys.
We're really after these Asian carp. We're doing well. We got over 6 million pounds out of Kentucky, the Barkley Lakes, looking to get at least 8 million, get all of those out of there and process this year. We've had great spawns on Kentucky Lake with bass, crappie, bluegill, our shad, our threadfin, and our gizzard shad are coming back well. We've got a ton of 14 to 15 inch fish in the lake right now. So I'm really pleased. And one of the things that was not really known about Kentucky Lake was it used to be one hell of a good spotted bass fishery. Now I'm talking 4 and 5 pound spotted bass, and I'm starting to see them for the first time in about 20 years. So I'm getting excited about what's happening here.
Great.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah. Hey, Mark. So,
Hey.
yeah, kind of like we were talking about the run to tie. So, I just kind of your approach. So, let's say your back's healthy, and hopefully it will be soon. And you show up and see the forecast that these guys had, which was basically no more than 10-mile-an-hour winds all the way through practice in the tournament. What's your practice approach? Do you split it up? Are you all in on the south? Like, what would you have done coming into this tournament? You know, with a healthy back and a low wind forecast, how would you approach Champlain?
Well, Rich, you know, if I'd have seen that, I would have spent 2 days at tie, and then I would have spent 1 day up north to have something to fall back on, just in case the weatherman was wrong. Because face it, I mean, it's the only job where you can be wrong so many times and still keep your job being a weatherman. And weather shifts quick, and the winds come up quick here. I've been down at tie thinking, yeah, I can stay another 20 minutes. I can fish a little longer. And then one little puff of breeze, and halfway back up the lake, they're 5 footers. So it's a real gamble. And John is really, really, really south. He has gone a long, long way. I think he's closer to Florida than he is anywhere else, actually. But he has really made a run. You can see how his hair's all poofed out there. It looks like he has a hair about as bad as I do. But watch him. He's gonna cut some down fishing that wacky rig. He's got one.
And even a bigger commitment for John, because his boat isn't quite as fast as everybody else's. So
very true. But it will, even though it's an aluminum rig, the shape of it, the deep V he's got, it'll get him back and handle that big water safely. It's a funny looking little boat, but man, he travels a long way sometimes in it.
Hey, Mark, let me ask you this. Are you surprised by what you're seeing right now, him with the spinning rod and reel and a wacky rig in Ticonderoga?
Well, not really, because where he's at right there, that water's relatively clean. John fishes with that spinning rod a heck of a lot more. He's got braid on there, so it's not necessarily like he's fishing a spinning rod with 6 or 8 pound line on it. He did well with that at Chickamauga in events. He's done well with that in Texas. So that's part of his game plan. And you can see that water's relatively clear. That's why that wacky presentation is working so well for him right there.
Is that something that 20 years ago you would see guys in an area like that throwing a spinning rod and reel?
No, it has just developed in the last few years. Look, back to back, he's got another one on. It's just developed pretty much here in the last little bit. The pressure on these fish has grown on some of these lakes, and it takes more of a finesse presentation. When he gets a chance to flip a jig or throw some kind of vibrating bait, he certainly does that. So he's not afraid of that. But this little bit more finessey technique gets these fish moving pretty quick. And you get so darn many bites fishing that way.
All right. Anybody have questions for Mark? I see
Anyone
no
surprised
hands.
Fritz is in second?
Well, it's good to see David up there. You know,
Yeah.
There's 2 things that David is very proficient at. One is winding some kind of plug. But what most people don't know is how much David drags a Carolina rig. I bet you $1 he's got a Carolina rig in his hand right now, and he's found a group of fish because he jumped up there quick in the standings this morning. I bet he's dragging a Carolina rig, but I guarantee you he'll test them with a plug as well.
Hey, you know what else he has on his boat that probably nobody else has, Mark?
I know exactly what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly what that is.
Is that a lost art, reading that flasher?
Well, a flasher tells you things in real time. Electronics have really come full force, and you see them giving you information quick. But a flasher can tell me the density of the bottom so much quicker. I can read shells on it. I can read rock on it. I can fish a drop shot on it. I'd give $1, Mark, if we could go back to just straight flasher tournaments and see how these young guys did. A flasher and a paper map. That's what I'm going to the rules committee for next year, so that we'll have these type tournaments. And it really gives you a different sense of how the bottom looks and what the bottom looks like. And then that's what David is using that for. That's how he finds that spot within a spot that he's so noted for, one single cast. And 9 times out of 10, that is something with the density of the bottom.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mark. All across the country, if you saw what John is fishing right now, in be it a river system, a lake system, whatever, there would be a tendency for the non-professional to try and pick everything apart that was in that area that he was fishing. Why is that not happening? And what gives you an indication that you just shouldn't be going down to the bank when you have a lot of laydowns and lily pads and grass and everything like that?
Well, wood at Champlain is an oddball. It's hard to find any significant amount of wood except down there at Ticonderoga. There's very little of it on the north end of the lake. So you'll see these guys on the north end of the lake just in an area moving around, either circling around or going down the bank. They're looking for oddities in that grass. John's looking for something that's totally different, and wood is a heck of a lot easier to pinpoint that fish or make that fish that's not in an active mood move out from under that cover where he's not a catchable fish out to the outside edge of that piece of cover where he becomes catchable. It just changes the odds for John, and he's looking. John plays the odds on what's the best way to get a bite. And right now in that wood, that is the key target because there's miles and miles of that grass. Yeah. He's a Florida guy and knows how to fish grass, but he's looking for the high percentage play right there. And those pieces of wood are what's the high percentage.
All right. As we look at Jamie Hartman now throwing a Carolina rig, how important is leader length on these fish at Champlain?
Well, the water's clean, Mark, but it's not as clean as what you think. It's only 3 to 4 foot of visibility. So you can cut that leader length down. My general rule is the cleaner the water, the longer that leader length. And the grass is probably in the 15 to 18 inch range on the bottom. So he's not having to have that long leader length such that to keep that bait on top of that grass. It looks like he's got a moderate 3.5 to 4 foot, which is pretty common on how I like to drag the old ball and chain around. So that's the deal. Water clarity and the height of the grass on the bottom.
All right. Honestly, I didn't think that we'd be talking about Carolina rigging here, folks. So don't hold that against me. It just happens to be one of the techniques that works very well in this situation.
And it just catches those better smallmouth up there for some reason when you have to fish slow for them.
All right. Let's see if we can listen into Jamie here.
But I got more stuff, man. I've been debating for an hour now which way I'm heading. Either I'm heading across or I'm heading back down and across. I don't know. Didn't get any real big bites in practice, so it's kind of tough to make that decision. But if I can just pluck one more big one here, I'd be tickled pink, no doubt.
Jamie Hartman.
All right, is that pretty standard, Mark? You kind of got a glimpse at what he was using there. Is that pretty standard?
Yeah, some sort of crayfish bait. The crawfish abound up there, and smallmouth like steak just like we do. So that's just a little bit bigger profile than a finesse worm or some of the finesse style drop shot baits that you could drag on that thing. Again, he's just looking for that better quality fish. He's got about 12 pounds. And he catch 3 or 4 more good ones, and he'll bounce up to that 15-pound range real quick.
All right, there you see Austin Felix with a nice smallmouth.
Yeah, Austin started on smallmouth this morning and moved up to the upper end of the lake in Missisquoi Bay. What's unique about Missisquoi is if you catch a smallmouth pitching and flipping for largemouth, it's generally a doggone big one. There's not as many smallmouth up there, primary largemouth habitat, but if you get a good one, it just goes in the box.
Hey, let me ask you this, Mark. With the focus, obviously, the last couple of events on smallmouth, how difficult is it from being from the Midwest or the South to really fine-tune your game when it comes to catching smallmouth?
Well, it's a learning process. You have to end up understanding that the smallmouth are fish that tend to move a lot more. And that's what burns most of us Midwesterners. We find this big school of smallmouth here today, gone tomorrow. You also have to understand that the forage base is a little different. and they prefer smaller baits. So if you can get them to react to a larger bait like we like to fish here in the Midwest, then you're in control. But 9 times out of 10, what gets us is the fact that the fish move so much, and we're not used to having them move. We're used to catching largemouth that tend to stay in certain areas.
Now, this is obviously earlier footage of John. We actually saw this catch. I mean, it looks like he's casting right in that gut. What's so special about that gut, potentially?
Well, on the graphic they just showed, it looks like he's up some sort of a ditch somewhere, some sort of a little river coming in, and probably right there where those lay down trees are. If you notice, there's not much grass around them, and it's probably a little bend in the creek in which the water's a little bit deeper right there. And in a summertime pattern, even though he's up a creek, way up a creek, that summertime pattern is going to keep those fish closer to the deepest water available. And looks what it looks like, a little creek bend right there.
Yeah. All right,
now
let's
he's moved
see.
up to a bridge.
Yeah, let's see if we can listen in here.
Could take longer to get back.
I'll tell you one thing that really surprised me.
All right, we're here in Zona and
He's been
Sanders.
here a lot. There we go. Get in that 1 second.
Mm.
Might be a little bigger.
Yeah, taking some time on that one.
It's a better one.
There we go. What's that, number 4? Number 4. Ooh, I swallowed it.
All right, number 4 for John Cox there. Hey, the area that he's in right now, Mark, if he was in there or if you targeted an area like that during practice, do you want to hook those fish, or is that something you might catch one and then go, okay, I get an idea on what's in here and I don't want to, sore mouth anything that might help me during the tournament? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what happens a lot of time, Mark, when you do hook the first bite in the area and the water's clean enough, you see all of his buddies swimming with him. And that's probably what he did, or he went in there without a hook on his bait just to count his bites. There's Seth Fighter flipping a good one in there on a jig. That's the right kind right there. So he probably had several bites and just didn't hook many of them. If you notice the fish John caught earlier, those fish are not very far from spawning. They have just spawned. That fish was lean and long and was recouping from spawning. Even this late into July, the 1st of August, those fish just spawned less than 3 or 4 weeks ago. So finding those healthy ones like Seth has got there is going to be a big, big deal.
I think a lot of times, Champlain, you do want to hook a few because, like you mentioned earlier, Mark, those 2 1/4, 2 3/4 pound fish don't do you nearly as good as that 3 to 3 1/4. So sometimes you gotta
You
test
have
them
to
a
catch
little
a
bit.
few of them. You get so darn many bites, and after you start getting bites and you feel what it's like, how do you weigh a 2 2/4 to a 3 1/4 when he bites it after you? I got to look at a few of them. So I've got to catch some of them as well just to know. The smallmouth are a little different. They're a little more visual. You saw Clark Winlet earlier burning a spinnerbait. A top water, you can get them to come up and you can see the size of the fish. But when you're out there dragging something, you're going to have to look at a couple of them just to see it. Fish school according to size for one reason. It's athletic ability. A 2-pounder goes down the bank swimming at a certain speed versus a 4-pounder. A 4-pounder is a stronger fish. He swims a hint faster. So that's why you get segregation of fish as far as sizes go in schooling. And many times you pull out there and get 100 bites and they're all 2-pounders. Very seldom do you ever get 4s and 5s mixed in with little ones, but happens occasionally, but not very often.
Hey, Mark, Bass is showing a lot of aerial footage now, obviously, with the addition of drones and so many other things. I want to go back, back in the 70s and 80s. Were you one of those guys, and who are the guys, I can think of a couple names, that would actually fly lakes before they went off limits? Did you ever do that?
I'm the biggest chicken in the world, so no, I didn't do that much. I did a couple of times. I would get to go over a lake on commercial airlines and do a little air reconnaissance in. I'm trying to think of some of the guys that I can remember. I think Nixon did a little bit of that. Clun may have done some of that. way back in the early days, but that was, it was expensive to do, and it did give you an advantage. When payouts weren't quite as high, it was a real risk. I mean, you might have to spend $500 to go on a plane ride, but boy, you could really narrow it down. A lot of times you'd get a couple guys that would go together and do that. But that kind of slowed down with the advent of Google Earth and became a little more safety conscious. So we all spend time on Google Earth and do the same things now. But there were a lot of guys that did that. I'd say there would be up to 10 to 12 guys a tournament would do that back in the early 90s when I started fishing.
I remember they would actually hook up with like some of the local crop dusters. And actually, I know a story of one individual that actually went up in a little 2-man plane and found a very, very defined grass line that you just couldn't see, and they didn't have Google Earth back then or anything like that. And that became a huge advantage to see where that defined grass line was. And what reminded me that was that one shot that you said just here earlier when they were showing the shot. Man, see there, look at that defined grass line. And that was a huge advantage back in the day.
It really was. And it got shot down after everybody started complaining about it and figuring out how the guys were doing it. I helped shoot down a rule at Bass that I really would like to see reconstituted about the boats you can use. John's using an aluminum boat. I used an aluminum boat to win my Elite Series title. I think boats are tools. I think they're tools, and I wish we could go back to that. But some of the guys say it's unfair that some guys will get boats and other guys can't get boats and the whole 9 yards. So it becomes I go back to a statement I made years ago, Mark, that all of these endorsements that I have on my shirt are kind of like Girl Scout patches. When the guys that get to complaining the most out there about this rule and that rule, who sold the most Girl Scout cookies. Sometimes I wish everybody just shut up and fish and let's see who catches the most bass, but it doesn't work that way very long. I got shot down quick on the boat rule.
Wow. All right. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Have at it. Mark is here to answer any of the questions that you might have.
So, Mark, if I could go back to the practice and electronics question we talked about earlier, with the advent of tools like live scope, how does that change your practice? Because we saw multiple species being caught, like Sam said, there's cinch compared to drum. Can you actually differentiate on live scope and these other tools, the actual species of the fish? Does that change your practice?
It takes a little bit of time, but when you start spending some time with your face on the top of one of those Echo Map 10s and you're looking at it with live scope, you start seeing how fish school or how they relate to cover. I can actually start to tell you whether that's a bass or that's a carp or it's a crappie or whatever it is now that I've used it this long. And man, it's such an advantage. And after I catch one or I see a group of them and I know what species they are, a lot of times I won't even cast to them. It has become a huge staple in my boat. I had it before most guys did in 17, 18, and early 19. And I can look at least 4 top 5s that I made in that time period that were 100% related to live scope. And last week, live scope dominated like crazy, being able to look forward and with the live view up front. It's amazing what it does. It can take you off the fish too, because you see all these other different fish and you think as an angler, as a competitive person, I can catch every darn one of them. And you really can't, but it certainly helps you get around them and get your bait a heck of a lot closer to them.
And if you're like me, you look at it so much you get vertigo.
Hey, Mark, doesn't that frustrate you sometimes more when you can see them, but they just won't bite?
Well, it does. And then I get to wondering whether or not Takarani's got the right color one here now. He's got him a bass now. It does become frustrating when they won't bite, but that gives me a clue, Mark. That tells me, A, I need to turn off most of my electronics because those fish can hear the pinging, or B, I need to back my butt up and get back here some distance and let these fish have some room. So it will tell me that too, so that I can back up and those fish will calm down. So it's a two-way street with it, definitely.
All right, Mark, let me ask you this. Day one, is fish management critical in an event like this one where, you know, they can be schooled up, but they do move around. Is this event, the Lake Champlain event type of event, where you want to catch everything you can on day one, or does fish management really come into play?
Hey, this is a PGA tournament. This is like a golf tournament. Day 1 and 2, the first half of day 1 and the first half of day 2, I want to shoot par. And what I mean by that, when anglers go to different lakes, part of the research that I do is find out what par is. Is par 10 pounds a day? Is par 14 pounds a day? Is par 20 pounds a day? So with that information in my mind, if I run out there and catch me 17 or 18 pounds in the first hour or two, well, I'm going to have a practice day the rest of the time. I'm going to go try to find that better school of fish. Fish management, Mark, comes in when I have found a school of those very important 3.5 to 4 pound fish here on Lake Champlain. I'm going to manage those very, very carefully and play par the rest of the time. But if something happens to where I can go ahead and bust it on out there and get me 22 to 25, you bet your life I'm going to do it if I don't have to go through a lot of numbers. That's a big one right there for Drew Benton.
Yeah. I was trying to see, what is he doing?
Looked like a crankbait.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can listen in here.
That'll work.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's the right kind. That's at 3 1/4, 3.6, 3.7. Those extra 7 ounces on top of that 3 pounder make a big difference in this tournament.
$3.35. Gonna get rid of a 2.16.
£1.25 cull.
14 pounds.
Yeah.
We've been in the boat with Drew Benton all day long. Let's take a look at some of the action. He was one of the early guys to get hooked up this morning.
Oh, was he throwing a topwater?
I believe that's earlier footage there.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can take a topwater all day, Mark, there and get those big bites as well. So he's throwing a pretty big size bait.
All right. How important is the sun? We heard about the importance of the sun at the SLR. What's it like at Champlain?
It's same deal. Northern fish live in clear water all their lives. You know, you guys have smallmouth down there in what is that, Lake Eufaula there in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
And it's a muddy water situation most time. And then those smallmouth there bite well on dark days. Here in the north, these fish are all sight feeding fish, and they cannot see when it's cloudy, Mark. They don't bite near as well. Their strike zone becomes confined. On days that it's sunny and bright, they can see further and the strike zone's bigger. That is the general rule with northern fishing.
All right. Earlier, there was some footage of Clark Wendlandt, and he was actually catching some fish on a spinner bait, and it was bright, sunny skies. Is that kind of the norm? Is that tying into what you're saying?
Absolutely. Those fish see that from distance. They see that bait getting away. They see the flash of those blades. They see it moving at speed, and they can see it from a long way. And they're greedy. Those darn smallmouth will run out there and knock the snot out. It's the best bite in bass fishing. That's the thing I love about going up north is ripping a spinnerbait. It's my favorite way to fish because you got to have your toenails dug into the carpet of the front end of your boat because they will absolutely jerk it.
Have you ever been on a smallmouth school, maybe up in the north, even down south, maybe? I don't know. And all of a sudden, what just happened? I just caught a 2.5, 3 pound largemouth.
Occasionally, it doesn't happen a lot, but generally, if you catch a largemouth with those fish, it's generally a bigger than average fish. It'll be a 4 or 5 pound fish, but not very often. Not very often.
All right. Anybody out there, part of the party, have any questions for Mark? Just jump right in there.
So we only see spinnerbaits in the north now? It's surprising to even see a spinnerbait out nowadays.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is really funny. The vibrating jig is such a good bait. It's such a versatile bait. You're seeing a lot of tournaments won with it, but a doggone spinnerbait still catches them. You guys live in Oklahoma. I think every fish in Oklahoma will eat a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
Doggone it. but I still throw a spinnerbait an awful lot. But for speed, and that's the trigger that Clark was using, was burning that spinnerbait at Mach 1 back to the boat. Speed is what triggers those fish, and you can't do that with a vibrating jig. You've got to do that with a spinnerbait.
All right, look how fast that Benton is working that bait right now.
That's smallmouth for you. Speed kills. That's absolutely. He may be throwing a lipless bait even. He's hooked up again. You saw him hit a piece of grass, twitch it once, and one ate it. I didn't get a good look on the last fish catch on what he caught it on.
Oh,
it's like a decent one.
That's a crankbait.
Square bill bait.
Yeah.
Or is it no, it's a little diving plug.
DT 6 or 10 maybe size.
Yeah, something like that. But speed, you saw how he triggered that fish to bite with speed.
Hopefully it's a Bagley for his sake. But
well, it's interesting that you say that. I'm a Strike King guy, and we don't build any wood baits. And there are baits in which I have to use to get a fish to bite that we don't make. And I really try to use my Strike King line as best I can, but there are times that I have to use a different brand, a different style, a different type of bait. So that's probably what he's having to do, get one that has a different vibration.
Yeah, I really liked how last week Paul Mueller was completely open with that with the flatworm. It wasn't a sponsor at all, and he completely came out and said it on stage. He said it while he was fishing, and I don't know. I'm liking that kind of shift, it seems, where people are more willing to talk about something that they may not endorse at the end of the day.
Well, now with the advent of this live coverage, hey, if you see me lying, you get a whole different opinion of the angler. I mean, if I catch one on a different kind of bait and I say it's another brand of bait, well, that that's not the truth now. So you really have to be honest. And like I said, if it's a bait that doesn't fit into the lineup that I endorse, will I call it by name? I may not. I can't hide it. I may not. But I won't tell you that it's one that my company makes when it's not. I won't do that. And most guys are pretty understanding of that now.
So, Mark, have your sponsors addressed that discussion?
I have had them in the past say that. Don't give the other company a straight up endorsement there on live TV when we work with you. But if you have to utilize something different, we understand that. And they know each company doesn't cover the 100% spectrum of different baits. So sometimes I have to. Sometimes it's a color thing that I may need a different color that we don't make. So I have to use them occasionally. But I promise you, if you get in my Skeeter boat right now, you'll look and see that 91 to 92% of everything that's in there is the brand that I endorse, and that's a Strike King bait.
All right, Mark. I have a question about Takarani. He caught those two drum back to back, but it looked like that he stayed real close to the same area, and then we just cut away and saw what he caught, that big smallmouth. Is that, obviously it was the right move for him, but is that the norm where if you are catching 2-3 of those carp, do you still stay on that area, or is it time to get out of there?
Well, look, Mark, you're a carnivore just like I am. And if you're at the buffet and they've got steak there, you're going to stay there and eat that steak. That's all there is to it. Yeah. Those other species of fish, they love crawdads too. And he's in an area where there's probably some rock on the bottom. And these fish move through those areas. What you have are little small vantage points in a grass line or a rock line or a transition line that is an edge, and predators feed on that edge. These smallmouth move around a lot. It's not like they're just sitting on the end of one area. They're milling around in that area trying to find something to eat. So you may have 2 or 3 of those rough fish move through the area. You catch 1 or 2 of those, stay a few more minutes, and then here comes 4 or 5 of those big brown smallmouth that he's targeting. So it has a lot to do with the ambush point and how big an area that is. For
is
the
there
numbers.
a Mark that if they're there, there's no largemouth or smallmouth, they'll push those other predators out? Is that rare?
They just don't buddy up with them. They just swim through those areas. The one time you'll see a predator fish come in or another type fish come in is the way Seth is fishing and pitching that grass. When you get in that grass, you're having to deal with northern pike or pickerel up there. And they get in the same areas. They love a jig. They love a Texas rig. They love a Cinco style bait. They love anything that the bass does. Now, they come in numbers that may push those largemouth out of the way. That may happen here where Jesse's fishing, but those fish move through the area. The smallmouth move right back to the main vantage point of this particular lake.
All right. Very nice.
Asian carp are a total different deal. They're moving the largemouth out of the way. They're pushing them
Potomac catfish
ambush points. And our largemouth here in Tennessee River are having to find other ambush points that may or may not be the better place to feed.
All right. Hey, Mark, is there any chance that you might be able to fish maybe later in the year? Or is that just, are you definitely out for the remainder of the season and just going to look forward to 2021?
Well, if I get to feeling better, I am able to go back and fish, but my points would not count towards the Classic. I can come back and fish. That's the way the hardship rule reads. I probably will take a break. It's taken a long time to get strength. Pain is not my issue now, Mark. It's nerve issues, and I've got a nerve pinch somewhere, whether it's in the hip or it's in L4 or L5, those lower vertebrae down there, and I don't have any strength in my lower quadrant. I couldn't run from here to the mailbox at all. There's no way. I'll fall down. I can walk out there, but I can't run. My legs just feel extremely heavy right now. So that's the oddball thing, that pain's not the issue. It's a matter of strength for me right now.
All right, we're going to take a look at Seth Fighter now. There's a lot of these marinas in kind of the northern part on both sides of the lake. Is this something that, oh, well, there you have it right there.
You saw exactly where he pitched up there. Now, that's a good one right there.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And what you have is where these boats get parked. That's shallow enough water there that there's some sort of grass on the bottom or algae or whatever. Where these boats get parked, that ends up casting a shadow and the grass doesn't grow there. So it opens up an open space that becomes a perfect ambush point. That's the best fish we've seen all morning, guys. That's a really good largemouth.
That is a
fat that fish is.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, a spinning rod too.
No.
I think it was a bait caster.
No, he flipped the jig, I think.
Seth does everything backwards.
He's left-handed, I guess.
Yes, he is.
Is he left-handed? Yeah.
Let's see.
Those are the kind to get it done here on Lake Champlain.
Oh, yeah, that is.
Seth
He is
Fighter
left-handed.
with a
Wow.
big largemouth. Got to give a shout out. He was the pick on Golick and Wingo. Mike Golick picked Chris Johnston on day one last week, picked Seth Fighter this time around, but a big hats off to Mike Golick, Trey Wingo. I believe tomorrow is their last day. Last day.
Is
on
it this?
air.
Okay.
I believe it's tomorrow.
Wow.
Good fish there by Seth.
And what's crazy, Mark, is those fish will replenish. If he makes a pass through there and catch a few, overnight, there will be more move in under those boats. One of the very few places that you can fish a place like that and have them replenish. There's another good fish.
Wow. So you could actually target those areas. Maybe 2-3 days? Would it last 4 days though, Mark?
If it's a boat marina that's got out there a little closer to a main lake point or something like that, yeah, new ones will swim in every day. But you can come back and repeat this. I mean, if he goes through there and spends the rest of the day and catches 50 under there, probably not. But if he makes one pass and catches enough that he needs to move on, he'll leave them, and there'll be plenty there the next couple days.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure Seth's got lots of grass places to be rotating through, and you just got to get one or two of them to pop off every day. So,
and get one or two of those better than average 4, 4.25, 4.5, 5 pound fish. And then you look like you know exactly what you're doing then.
All right. You talked about the sunlight with the smallmouth. On this pattern here, does the sun make it better? Does it position those fish even better to ambush bait that are coming around there and actually create more opportunities?
Absolutely. You're pitching your bait in the darkest place that you can find, or you're pitching it under the biggest boat you can find, which will tell you that there's a bigger bare spot there. They'll come quick. Once they see that jig hit the bottom in that bare spot, you hop it once or twice. Most of the time it never makes it to the bottom. And they'll not slacking your line like crazy. It's amazing how hard they hit that bait. Now, he started on smallmouth this morning and got 5 pretty quick. And he's trying to get one of those better than average fish.
Man, Champlain is just a cool place, Mark.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous. The scenery is beautiful. The water is beautiful. The fish are there's so many bass that live there. It is a fantastic place to fish.
Fighter getting on a roll here. Kind of look at Bass Track real quick. Canterbury still in the lead unofficially with 18, followed by David Fritz. Hopefully they'll have some footage somehow, some way on Fritz. Sure, a lot of people out there wondering exactly what he was doing and where he was doing it.
Exactly. It may not, because with the current situation, the only real footage we're going to get, there's not going to be any marshals in the boat, so we won't get any of that cell phone footage coming in most likely. So if David didn't have a camera, he's probably out there all by himself. And I bet you 100 right now he's sitting down in a fold down seat. Bet you 100.
Heck yeah.
Now, do they have access to Bass Track now? Or is that?
The anglers do not. They do not. They put their own in through a different app on their cell phone that says you have either 6 pounds or 8 pounds or 12 pounds. And but they cannot see what the other anglers are doing, but they are putting in their own numbers.
Would you like to see that, Mark? Would you like to see what other guys have that you're competing against?
There's times that I would, Mark, but it would change how I fish. It would make me hurry, and I might fish down through that stretch of boat docks right there too fast and not make the right presentations. And I just like to do my own thing.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you would think Fighter has a set weight in his mind that he thinks he'd want to attain in the first day, and not knowing what the other anglers have, he doesn't want to burn through fish. So, at some point, he'll probably leave this area.
He probably will if he can get his weight up there into that 18 pound. That's a 3.5 pound average. He knows that 18 is going to do him well. What's hard to do here on the first day is misjudge and only come in with 13, because it's hard to make that weight up if you don't get it the first day. It's really, really difficult to make weight up here. You can slide down the leaderboard by not catching enough, but you have to catch them every day.
And he establishes that based on what he saw in practice.
On practice, past history. Like I said, you got to know what par is. And I spend a lot of time going through tournament results on lakes that I've never been to know what is par. Is that 12 pounds? Is that 14 pounds? Is 15 pounds a great weight? And that helps me gauge these fish. And these guys do the same thing.
Last year at Cayuga, Fighter was catching them, and he stopped at like 19, and then everybody caught like 24, 23, 25, and so I'm sure he's going to probably catch a little more than he normally would.
He may push it a little harder today, but I bet he doesn't push it all the way to the floor. I bet you $1 he doesn't do that, because he knows that this is a marathon. This is not a sprint.
Yeah,
the Cayuga tournament was amazing on how many of those 4.5 to 6 pounders got caught out there. Really deep out there in that 18 to 25 to 30 feet of water out there. It was amazing. I missed that part of it.
I got the results from a Wednesday nighter emailed to me this morning. Last night, I guess they fished. They fished out of like the middle part of the lake, middle south, and 20 something won it in 7th place even for a probably I think they go 4 to 9 something like that. 5 to 9, and 20 something to win that team tournament. seventh place was like even 15 pounds.
So there you go. 15 pounds, a 3 pound average. Now, again, that's two guys fishing.
Yeah.
So what I generally do there is if it's the 15 pounds for two guys, I'd say, 13 and a half with one guy fishing, that would make my par. I would come down off that 15 a little bit to par. And I see that 20 pounds won it. A really good catch then is an 18 and a half pound catch for a single guy. So that's kind of how I gauge it right there on that team result versus just a single guy fishing.
Even on like a Wednesday nighter like that, where it's, half the day fishing wise.
Even with that, but what that tells me is that potential for 20 is there because I'm going to get to fish longer. So if I get around those 3.5, 3 3/4, 4 pounders, I might stay a hint longer to make sure if 20 is attainable, you can bet you're behind. I'm going to try to get 20.
Hey, Mark, I have a question. We were talking earlier about practice and sort of sampling the goods on practice days. Does your approach change with like where John Cox is? That's actually where I'm pretty sure where Eric Johnson was in the FLW tournament last year. Did very well. So it's a spot. It's a pinch point. It's obviously probably fished in a lot more tournaments than the ones we're seeing here. How do you test the goods there? Make sure you don't have, because you want to know that they're there. Sometimes they're not at those pinch points, I assume, but.
Well, a pinch point is a pinch point's where the water gets funneled down and fish get concentrated into an area. There's several of those bridges that do the same thing there on St. Clair. So that pinch point area, you're going to have a likelihood of more fish. So I'm going to at least test to see what size there are. If I get a couple of bites in a row and there are those 2 3/4, 3 pounders, I'm done. I'll get down there and get me a limit of those, and then I'll pick a bigger bait up to see if I can sample through some of those bigger fish. I won't just keep catching those same fish time after time. If I can cull the bites that I'm getting with going to a larger bait and say getting from 20 bites a day to 2 or 3 bites, I'll get my first 5 that are those 3 pounders. And if there happen to be 1 or 2 of those better fish around, and I'll put a big heavy jig on or a bigger piece of plastic or whatever it is to get that better fish out of there, I'll mine that for a little while to see if that's a plausible thing in the first day of the tournament.
Makes sense.
All right, Mark, let's talk real quick about culling. What's the best practice? Do you put cull rings or cull clips on fish as soon as you catch them and put them in the live well, or do you wait until you get 5 and then kind of regroup and figure out what you have? What have you found to be the best practice?
For me, I try to make it as simple as possible. Every one I catch gets a non-penetrable cull tag. One of the TH Marines one's the one I use. They're very simple. They work well, and they stay on really well. I put 5 in there. I mean, that's all I can have. If I know I've got 5 in there and I catch one more, I've got to cull. We've seen recently some guys get some penalties for having 6 fish in a live well. That happened down in Eufaula. It happened at the St. John's. You get in a hurry, but I only allow there to be 6 cull tags in my boat at any time. I keep them all in the live well so that I know what I've got, and I cull them right then. Some guys wait, catch 5 real quick. If I'm blasting them as soon as I find a fish and I blast them real fast, and I know it's a quick deal, I may not do it, but 99% of the time, as soon as I catch one, I put a cull tag on it and I go on. I don't spend time, Mark, with a scale. I balance beam them. I don't care what the weight is. I've seen enough of them to know, yeah, I've got 5 in their weight. They weigh about 14.5, 15 pounds. I understand that, but I don't spend time. A balance beam is the truest weight form that I can get. So I use a balance beam from that TH set as well.
Did you ever have one of those, what were they called? Cullum rights.
I did. I'm too stupid to use one, Mark. And I never had an extra battery in the boat, and every time I'd go to pick the darn thing up, the battery would be out in it. So
yeah, hey, that was big time technology back in the day.
A lot of the guys still use that particular scale.
Really?
A lot of guys still use that Cullum Wright scale. Sure do.
Huh.
Canterbury's one of them, I believe.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Well, there you see the leaderboard, unofficial.
Now, see, look at the bottom of that, Mark. It's creeping up very slowly. It's been 15 pounds for a long time. Now it's moved up a quarter pound. Canterbury's got 20. He ain't got 18. He's got 20. He's always 2 pounds light. Fritz is always a little bit light. Brandon's got 17. Brandon's got 17. But you're seeing that creep up slowly. And that, like I said, that par is that 3 pound fish at Champlain.
I think one of the coolest things that I've seen so far today and what I've been watching is the guy that they're going to right there. I am thoroughly intrigued and enjoy watching guys and actually fishing this type of structure, especially on a lake like Champlain, man. That is a cool way to catch them.
It is, and there's several different areas there. He's in the inland sea. There's several of those there. This same pattern will exist over in Mallett's Bay under the sailboats. Seems like Mallett's, when it turns on, it's really, really, really big fish come out of there. There's been several big tournaments won there, both on our circuit and other circuits as well, fishing that boat pattern.
Let's see if we can check in, get the audio here.
Keep that going. Just pitching a jig around these boat docks. A lot of weeds in here.
See how quickly he's moving. He's not letting that bait settle. He's just getting the fish to react on the fall.
A lot of grass.
Hey, Mark, have you ever been in that marina? Do you have any idea how much water's in there, the depth?
It's really shallow there. It's 2 to 4 feet at most. You see how much, maybe even shallower than that. Look how thick the weed growth is. So underneath that pontoon boat, underneath that whaler right there, that area is clean because those boats sit there and the grass doesn't grow. So that's what he's targeting. It's not really that deep in that one. Now that may be one that you could fish through and may
looking
not.
at Seth Fighter's day, all eyes on Seth Fighter. Definitely a favorite.
All for shallow there.
Yeah, what do they do with their boats? Do they pull them out in the wintertime there?
Yes, they have to.
Yeah.
Because the ice, and most of the docks will get pulled out too. Most of the private docks roll in and roll out, and they'll leave them on the bank.
That's like there could be 3 feet ice there at that particular point. That's right here, just north of the sandbar, going out to South Hero Island, and big pike fishing spot for ice fishing.
Wow.
I don't understand ice fishing.
Well, I'll tell you, Champlain, if you want to get into ice fishing, if you went to a place like Champlain and go for lake trout, we use finders, fish finders, don't even use flags. And when you have a couple streakers come up on a rattle trap that you're reeling at 90 feet of water, I mean, when it's slow, but when those lake trout are biting, it's a lot more similar to bass fishing than that pan fishing.
Gotcha.
And they grow huge.
I equate, down here in the South, I equate ice fishing to night fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you can get away from your wife or your girlfriend. I never there's better things to do at night than go fishing.
Well, they turn ice fishing into a party, basically. I mean, all those huts and some of the things that I've seen up north.
Fishing, though, you can really do more like bass fishing, where, I'll go out alone with a flasher and just keep moving all day. It's no drinking, just water, and you gotta cover a lot of water to find them because they move.
So you're moving around without moving a complete hut, fishing shack. You're doing it without it.
They have one-man huts, but a lot of times if the weather's good, you'll bring no shelter, no windbreak, and just keep moving because you're going to be moving so quickly. A hut slows you down, makes you want to stay in a bad spot a little long,
You're way tougher than I am.
Hey, Mark, the one time that I went ice fishing, I went with Van Dam and Zona. It's the only time I'd ever go anyway. But one of the coolest things about that trip was, you know how fast Van Dam fishes? Well, he runs an auger the same way. The dude had like 30 holes drilled in about 5 minutes.
I don't doubt it.
It was insane. And then Zona tricked me big time. I had never been on a frozen sheet of ice like that. Except maybe to play hockey in a controlled non-lake environment. But this lake that they had me on, Zona had me on a snowmobile, and all of a sudden he goes, get off, we're going in. And I jump off the snowmobile, and what does Zona do? He takes off. Just leaves me there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to move because I seriously thought I was going in the lake.
Oh,
mean trick, man. Mean trick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if you noticed there on the crawl on the bottom, look who's moved up into second place. Brian Smith, East Coast angler. He is an unbelievably talented angler. He's had great success on Champlain in the past. He's going to be one to watch. He would definitely be on my fantasy team there.
So once again, if you're Fighter right here, do you go conservative? You know, you got 15 pounds, maybe 16. What do you do, Mark?
Well, he may have enough places like this that he feels like he can rotate through them and keep the pressure on them. But he's wanting to get up there to that 18, 19 to even 20. He's 2 swings of the bat from 20 right now. 2 4.5 pounders pushes him up there real close to 20. 19 to 20 is going to be real tough right now to guard. And if you could do that 4 days in a row, you'll be holding a blue trophy at the end of it.
All right. Once again, folks, you guys that are watching, even I haven't went to the YouTube comments. I should. I'm going to take a look at that real quick. But if you guys have any more questions for Mark, please take advantage. This is a very, very cool opportunity, and we greatly appreciate Mark taking the time out to be a part of this. So ask away.
Yeah, I think Seth would tend to just burn this today because these docks are not super unobvious. So if he's got other stuff, I think, you can get the business done in a pretty well-known area like that, do it today, and then save some of that other grass for a different day.
That's a wise strategy. I mean, get it and go. And I'm sure Seth is really, really he creeps around there and slides around there and is very, very smart fisherman. He's a very smart fisherman. He's developed to be one of the top contenders here in the last 3 or 4 years. When he first started, that's what happens to young pros. They come in and they're very inconsistent. Then all of a sudden that graph just starts staying up here, high finishes. And he's done very well with having 1 or 2 little tricky places in his back pocket that may only be sliding out a foot or 2 deeper or sliding a foot or 2 shallower. He's become a very consistent angler over the last little bit.
All right. Anybody else out there, Mark, that has really caught your eye being one of the seasoned vets out there as far as some of the young guys that are out on tour?
There's 2 of them. Well, actually 3 of them. Well, 4 of them. I can go down a list. It's crazy. I've really gotten to know Brandon Cobb and Shane LaHue very well. I met them at the St. Johns River. They stayed next to me in the place that we were staying there last year. And young guys, I'd never met them before. And within 15 minutes, I felt like they were brothers, like I knew them very, 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 very close. They're really good guys. They're really great fishermen. They're better people than they are fishermen, and that's a huge compliment in my mind. And the other dynamic duo are the Drews, the Drew brothers, Drew Cook and Drew Benton. Those 2 right there, those 2 pairs are the future of fishing. You're going to see those 4 anglers excel in fishing here over the coming years. They work well together. They're fantastic anglers. They're honest. I mean, I can walk up to him and say, Drew Cook, are you catching them? And he'll say, yeah, we're catching them pretty good. Or no, I don't have a clue. And very fair on the water. That's what I love about the Elite Series guys. This new group of guys that have come in, the ethics are of the highest standard. And we kind of got away from that for a while, but it's back. And I really enjoy these young guys that are so honest in their fishing and what they're doing. Last year, I had a lot of guys come by me and say, hey, Mark, are you fishing this left-hand bank? No, help yourself. I'm staying over here on the right. Or can I go past you 200 yards? I won't start my motor for 200 yards. That didn't exist over the last 10 or 15 years, and it's great to have it back.
Wow. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool stuff there. I know a lot of people on the YouTube feedback greatly appreciate what you're doing, Mark. It is fantastic, the breakdown and some of the insights that you're giving us. And we'll actually take the audio version of this, even though it's somewhat unique, and still turn it into an iTunes podcast, because I think there's all kinds of information out there that people can benefit from with their game, what they're trying to do on their tournament quest, whatever they're involved with. I'm curious with some of the guys, while the commercials are running, some of the guys that are watching this actually taking place. What is one part of your game that you think that you would benefit from if Mark Menendez got to spend a day in the boat with you? Pretty good question. In other words, what would you take the most advantage of if Mark Menendez actually spent a day in the boat with you and you said, hey, Mark, can you show me this? All right. Jamie, what would that be?
Yeah, so that's interesting, Mark. So when I marshaled with Mark on the Potomac, 2016, the one Lucas won, I know the river fairly well, but what I realized is decision making. These guys do not waste time. And right, wrong, or indifferent, they have a decision in their mind or a plan, and they execute it whether it works or not. They're committed to that, and I think that's what I struggle with is when to leave, where to go. You got so many spots in your mind. It's like, I can run over here, they may bite. And that's the biggest thing for me is decision making.
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question. Should I stay or should I go?
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, when I start thinking, am I going to catch another one here? It's time for me to move on. I've had co-anglers or marshals get in the boat with me and say, man, you guys fish so much faster. So much faster.
Yeah.
I've had great tournaments where I had that motor guide turned down to where the blade was just barely turning. I've had times where I am moving at Mach 1 everywhere I go. And I think that's another thing that the average guy doesn't take into mind is the mathematical equation that we got. You only get X amount of casts in a day's time. You make 1,000, 2,000, whatever many presentations you are. But are those presentations made in the best areas? Where they're higher percentages, and like where Cox is right now, it's a pinch point. He's in a high percentage area, and he's catching fish. So those are the things that I get a lot of questions about is why do you move so fast? Why didn't you stay here longer? Why didn't you make multiple presentations? And on the flip side, one of the things I see a lot of anglers don't do, I don't care what you're doing, the presentation, wacky worm, a jig, a spinnerbait, whatever, a crankbait. If you get a bass, if you catch a bass, and I don't care if he's this long or this long, if you make a presentation and you're successful, before you put that size 12 on that trolling motor and move, make the same presentation again. Doesn't work every time, but over the course of a year, I promise it'll put 15 to 20 more bass in the boat that you had never caught if you make that same presentation one extra time.
And he had a unique spinnerbait I want to talk about, but I won't disclose it here.
All right.
On the Potomac, if he remembers.
Really? Anybody else? Rich, you have anything? What would you do if Mark was in your boat for a day?
Yeah, I think it would be awesome to have somebody like Mark, like in whether it's an actual tournament or a mock tournament situation, like be like the armchair quarterback and critique and like ask you questions and be like, are you sure you want to stay, or have you thought about throwing this here? Or like, I think that would be a really unique experience in a tournament situation to have somebody that is a veteran like Mark kind of, I mean, and I wouldn't say caddy, like to carry your bags, but caddy to the, to talk about how you make that shot or how you make that cast, or should you be fishing deep, or, should we look for current, or, something like that. Really cool.
That is a grand idea, and that'd be a lot of fun to do. It doesn't mean that my answer is always right. That's the great thing about bass fishing. Sometimes what I think is the craziest thing in the world or the wrong thing to do might be what wins the event. So sometimes you have to think out of the box, whether it is take an aluminum boat or fish that unique spinnerbait that you were talking about earlier. I just remembered which one it was, and I just ordered me about 2 dozen of those things the other day. They're back on the market. Whatever it is, sometimes that's the great thing about fishing. You're never always right. Sometimes you're more right than wrong, but you're never 100% right. And that's what makes me go back every day. That's why we become so darn addicted to this sport. It changes daily.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah. Mark, I guess for me, kind of from the beginning, talking about live scope, I'd really like to be in the boat with you to really dial that in. I picked up one of those at the beginning of this season and had some success with it. And been really cool to watch them eat it on it and that sort of thing, but really just to dial it in with all your settings and what you're doing with it. And I can almost find myself sometimes looking at it almost too much, I think, like throwing a jerk bait or something and trying to find it on the jerk, on pan optic. I should just be going down the dang bank is what I should be doing. But.
Exactly. You'd probably be bored to death with me. I don't do a lot with the settings. The one thing I can advise is keep your distance at about 50 to 55 feet. You get a much better resolution. You can see things better. The further you put that out there, the ability to see things goes away. So 55 feet is where I keep mine.
All right. Hey, Mark, that shot that we're looking at right now with Drew Benton, is that kind of a rarity? It looks very, very calm. And when the water is calm like that, does that hurt the bite on Champlain?
Well, it can, in rough water, smallmouth, the best northern conditions is about a 2-foot chop on the lake and high bluebird skies. That's when these things eat like crazy. So it will slow the bite down. The clouds are probably slowing his bite down as much as anything else. But it is a rarity for that place to be that flat. I mean, that is a rarity.
All right. Why doesn't a topwater work? I mean, we saw that one bit of footage. I don't even remember who it was, but I can remember maybe 10, 15 years ago on Champlain that when the conditions look like what they look like right now, guys would be out there throwing, spooks and whatever existed 10, 15 years ago. Why doesn't that work? Or did it just go away?
Well, I don't think it is. I think it's more of a product of water temperature. It's been hot up north this summer, and water temperatures, my guess, are probably 76 to 80 degrees would be about my best guess. Sam, is that about what it is up there?
The smaller lakes. I haven't been to Champlain this year, but that sounds about right. Probably the lower end of that.
And, we're used to water temperatures in the Midwest getting in the 90s. And what happens with bass, Mark, is when they're a cold-blooded creature, so water temperature dictates their metabolism. But when water temperature gets to the upper level of what is ever high temperature geographically, fish tend to shut down a little bit to conserve energy. They have the need to feed. They've got to go get a bite to eat, but they don't chase as much. So that may be why these guys are fishing lower in the water column than higher in the water column, because these fish are not chasing that far. Here on Tennessee River this time of the year, I still use a big bait, a 10-inch worm, a big anaconda, whatever it is, to get that bite. But I don't move it very much. I put it in a piece of cover and shake it around and keep it there, shallow or deep, and they eat that big bait. But, Tennessee River is famous for a 6XD or a 10XD. They just won't chase that big bait right now. And that may be what's going on up there right now. The water temperature is so warm that they don't want to chase.
Yeah, that's a good insight right there, folks. Good stuff.
Tacarante just dumped a good one while we were talking.
I saw that.
Was it a drum or was it a bass?
It was definitely a smallie the way it jumped.
Or cinch or whatever it was Sam was talking about.
Sam, what's the name of that fish again that he caught?
Tench.
Tench with a T.
Tench, T, okay.
It was actually in the inland sea. And when I pulled my boat out that day, I'd taken a picture of it. And there was actually a fisheries biologist there talking to people about invasive species. And they showed him, and he said, yeah, we're seeing more and more of those. And that was 5 years ago now. So I'm guessing, seems like they've populated even more. But
well, right now, Fish and Wildlife is currently watching over 187 different invasive species. I went to Washington, D.C. with Wright Waters and met the new director of Fish and Wildlife, a biologist turned lawyer by the name of Miss Aurelia Skipworth. And Miss Skipworth and I had a meeting, and we talked about that. And it's everything from terrestrial invasives to from things like kudzu to other types of land-based critters and plants, and even a lot of little microscopic organisms that they're worried about as well. So one or two fish make up a very small percentage of invasive species worries that we have in this country right now.
All right, so it looks like John Cox made a move. Any idea where he's at right there, Mark?
I don't. That southern end, I've spent limited time that far south that he's gone. I believe he's below Fort Ticonderoga, a significant boat ride. So, but he has definitely moved out of that creek, and now he's searching some of those grass flats, looks like with a vibrating jig, power fishing, trying to find one of those little patches where there are multiple good fish. So you can see how much bigger the river is now where he's at.
Let's see.
Or what I call the river down there at the lower end.
Yeah, let's see if we can get the audio here.
Just really non-conforming there at the St. Lawrence.
Missing a few of our anglers this week. Yusuke Miyazaki, not in this event. Mark Menendez on a injury timeout. Miss Mark Menendez. And Kelly J, actually not with us this week, who's done very well on Champlain.
Personal reasons. That brings our total to 85 Elite Series pros.
Hey, Mark, not including the Great Lakes, what's the roughest water you've ever been in?
Oh, I tell you, there's a stretch in Decatur, Alabama on Wheeler Lake where it narrows down. You have current coming one way, wind going the other way. That stretch right below the bridge in Decatur, Alabama, they'll get 8 to 10 foot and really close together. That's ugly. I despise the Chesapeake Bay. That tide goes one way, the wind, it will wise you up quick. The Potomac can get ugly. But as far as on an inland lake, that stretch right there in Decatur, Alabama may be the worst I've ever been in. And there's a little stretch up there, Jeffries, on the ditch there, Muskogee, that will straighten you out real quick too, right there above Greenleaf Lake. Cove. That one right there will put your watch in your pocket for sure.
Yeah, you get that current and the wind. Yuck.
Yeah, the biggest waves I was ever in was on the Eastern Basin near Buffalo, New York, on Lake Erie. Those were I was actually fishing waypoints in 10 to 12 footers, and I was amazed at how close I could stay to a waypoint. I think I had 23 pounds of smallmouth that day in 12 footers. Seth's still catching them on a jig.
Yeah.
So he's creeping up. It's showing that he has almost 16 pounds now.
It looks like he was just fishing the grass out in front of the docks.
He did. And he's got a good one right there. That's the middle score.
That's another llama.
That's the one he wants.
Now he knows he's pushed himself up there a good ways. Here comes the llama. Here it comes. Here comes the llama.
COVID didn't know
at its best.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Careful there, Seth.
There's a penalty.
Not in our league.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's see if we can hear him on how much it weighs.
2 3/4. I'm about to call.
Oh, that's gonna be a good call.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a 2-pound call.
What? Cameraman Eric Kafka. He gets equally as excited as the anglers when they catch a conger, as you heard Seth Fighter say right there.
16 to 18 and a half with one bite on the flipping stick, boys.
Yeah.
Wow.
Number 3. Okay, don't mess this up since you're really bad at counting.
So that put him to 18 and a half. So
very important. He's doing the process of culling. You catch 5, you catch your 5-fish limit. When you catch number 6, you throw back a small one. Put a big one in there, like that.
That's a pretty good call.
You can't
So
that'll work.
You have only 5 in your life.
Yeah. Wow.
Now you may see him move and go do a little more prospecting. Now he knows he's got par for the day. He's got a half a day left. Now he may go do a few things that either A, are going to get him fewer and bigger bites, or just go look at some more area.
I think he wants to.
Was that a plastic bait, not the jig? Was he throwing something different there?
I did not get a good look at it.
He's pointing at the milfoil.
Did you see what it was, Rich? It looked like it was a plastic, some type of plastic bait.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a tube craw or something like that. I didn't get a good look at it, but that's something he likes to throw quite a bit.
Hartman hooked up with a good one. Now, the smallmouth guys may stay and catch more off of a single place because they know they'll generally replenish out there. So he may stay there and clip, 4 ounces here, 6 ounces there, 3 ounces there. He may stay and try to move up that way because he knows he's probably around more fish.
I was kind of thinking Hartman, like if he can get 18, 19, 20 pounds, like he would go fish largemouth because there's a ceiling with smallmouth too. But it'd be interesting to see what he does.
It will be. It will be. If he gets to where he thinks he's got to that ceiling, that 18 and a half, 19 pounds of smallmouth, yeah, one crack of the whip and then you catch a 5-pounder and you're 20, 21.
And he knows plenty of places to try on Champlain.
He probably's been there a couple times, I'd say.
And he catches largemouth like he did on Cayuga, so that's.
I wouldn't be surprised if he would crank up and run to Missisquoi.
So, Mark, do you fight the smallmouth different on the bait, or describe how you do it with the bait caster versus a spinning rod?
Well, just keep them down. Try to stay ahead of them, obviously. With 12 or 15 pound line like Jamie's probably using, yeah, I may lean on them and cut a lot of that jumping down and just get them in the boat a little quicker than I will with the spinning rod. The spinning rod, you've got to be patient. Now, these smallmouth fight hard, but they don't fight near as hard as what the St. Lawrence River fish fight. Those are some bad dudes because they're working out their entire life. These fish jump a heck of a lot more. Clark's got on right now. And they pull hard. Don't get me wrong. They pull hard. But see, he just boat flipped that one in, and he's probably got 8-pound line on there. He didn't do that last week. You can't do that with those fish last week.
So somebody in the YouTube comments said that Cayuga was rescheduled to Gunnersville. I don't know if that's.
I just got a message from Bass, and that's what it says. Cayuga is going to be, it's going to be Gunnersville. It's saying a September makeup tournament will be in September at Gunnersville. September and October. That'll be a stingy tournament. It'll be a high weight tournament, but it'll be a stingy as far as numbers goes.
Yeah, they had the Costa Championship there a few years ago, and it was pretty tough.
Yeah. Tennessee River is a tough place to fish in September and October. It turns on again about the middle of November, Thanksgiving. It gets real good again, but that's a pretty stingy time.
That's kind of the cool thing that I'm looking forward to see how you guys and see how the guys out on tour on the Elite Series handle some of these pre-fall fishing situations. And the one that I'm really looking forward to is the event at Santee Cooper, because that is going to be brutal, Mark.
Oh, I love a grind better than I do a slugfest.
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys that'll find out how to catch 5 every day. Will they be the right ones? I don't know, but I love a grinder better than I do a slugfest. And I really hate that I'm not going to be involved in those. Matt Herron and I have had long discussions, almost gloating a little bit, saying, yeah, we'll see how these boys do once we get into these really tough tournaments where 5, you're proud to catch 5. You're going to watch a guy like Bill Lowen step up to the top rung. He may get his first blue trophy with a grinder event like that. I'm really going to miss not getting a chance to fish this fall. I'm really, really sorry about that part of it. Now the numbers have moved up another 1/4 pound. See how they're just continually moving up a little bit?
I feel like Hartman's
prediction that it'll take 17 a day will get you to the 4th day. 51 will be in the top 10 for the final day. About 51, 52 probably will get you in.
All right, Mark, I think this is a great place to kind of wrap stuff up. Once again, I want to thank Bruce Aiken and Jim Sexton and Bass for allowing us to do this. Hopefully you guys that have been on and hopefully the fans really enjoyed. I know I did. Really enjoyed Mark's insight on some of the stuff that was going on. Hopefully this will not be the last time that we do this, Mark. Man, just a fantastic job, and I know everybody out there greatly appreciates your insight on doing this today.
Well, thank you. It's been fun being an armchair quarterback for a change. I don't like being here, Mark. I promise you that. I'd love to be out there in the midst of the heat of the battle. But one of the things I love to do is help people become a better angler. And if I've said something that sparks an interest or clarified something, I'm grateful that I'm able to do that. I hope I didn't confuse everybody any more than they already were, but it's been a lot of fun. And again, thank you, Bass, for letting us do this. It just helps us all become better anglers.
Yeah. All right. Rich, Jamie, TJ, Adam, Sam, anything else for Mark before we wrap things up? Rich, I'll start with you.
I don't know. This was just awesome. I thought it was a ton of fun. I look forward to potentially doing this again, and I hope your road to recovery is quick, Mark.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. We'll know more tomorrow. That's for sure.
All right, Jamie.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for doing this. Get healthy. And I have some pictures from that Potomac tournament I need to send you. So I'll just hit you up on Instagram. Is that the best way to do it?
That'd be great. Yeah, Mark Menendez Bass. Just send me a DM and we'll go from there. And yeah, you were in the boat with me when we were throwing that spinnerbait right in front of Elias, and he really got upset with us. And that
yeah.
I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right, TJ.
Hey, Mark, one last tip. How do I chase the herring in the summertime?
Ooh, herring, that's a $64,000 question. The first thing I would do in the summertime is look to windward banks. Before I would go fishing tomorrow, I would look and see what the wind did today to see that it was hitting on a specific part of the lake. So those fish get pushed over there. They're chasing microscopic organisms, plankton, fry. So banks that have had an extreme amount of wind on them the last couple of days, that would be the first thing I would do this time of year to try to find those herring.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for both Marks for today.
Adam.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for coming on, man. Hope you get healthy soon. And just appreciate both Marks setting this up. It's been a blast.
Very good. Right. Thank you, guys.
Sam.
Yeah, same here. Just thank you guys both. Thank you, Mark, for your time, and Mark for your time.
Sam, stay on thick ice. Don't go out there when it's thin, okay?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Mark, any final thoughts on this, man?
Well, like I said, it's going to be a marathon. It's going to be a horse race. I'm going to, as soon as we unplug here, I'm going to go turn on ESPN2 and get on the couch and watch what these guys are doing. And those key bites like Seth got a few minutes ago, that's how the guys are going to differentiate themselves. It takes those better than average fish, 1 or 2 a day, are going to be really key for the guy that wins this. And I make a prediction. I believe it won't be a runaway. We'll be biting our fingernails on day 4 to see who wins this.
All right. Very cool. Thank you so much, everybody that watched. And we will be back on Monday. Matthew will be here to my right, and we will kick things off. So make sure you check out the website on Sunday, what we have lined up for next week. All right. Enjoy ESPN2. Get over there. Watch it on Bassmaster.com. And we will see what happens over the next 4 days on Lake Champlain. Everybody be safe. That's it. We're back on Monday.